we do record our talks for YouTube and for our website. And if you're not comfortable with that and you want to turn off your video camera or mute yourself or whatever it is, feel free. Okay, I'll just give about 1 more minute and then I'll just start. Stacy's here.
Hi friends, did this already start? Am I super duper
No,
late?
you're right on time. I'm gonna make you a co-host.
Awesome, thank you. So
Yeah.
sorry, I have been in a different time zone and I had this meeting for 5 p.m. for some reason.
Yeah, no, we normally do. It was just at 1 today because Temi is in England, so it's 9 p.m. there. So we're trying to make it work for her. Actually, I'm making you a co-host, Stacy. We were about to just start at 4:05. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have you introduce Collab Lab right now and maybe go over that, and then I will introduce Temi and we can get started.
Awesome. Yes, thanks for bearing with me. I just got in from England last night, so I'm still kind of on your time zone mentally, but physically in Pacific time. Anyway, hi everybody. Welcome to Navigating Your First Tech Role. I'm Stacy, one of the co-founders of Collab Lab. Collab Lab is who hosts these talks. If you haven't heard of us, we are a nonprofit organization that gives early career engineers project-based experience. We found that a lot of really amazing people are out there learning how to code on their own or going to boot camps and then have an extra hurdle to face when actually landing their first jobs because they don't have the project-based experience they need to really shine in those interviews and talk about what it was like to be on a team of developers. So 4 quarters of the year, spring, summer, winter, fall, we run 4 to 5 teams across the world. We have North American teams, we have Latin American teams that are fully run in Spanish, and we have European, African teams as well. And what we do is we get 4 developers together under the leadership of 3 mentors. And those 4 developers split into pairs of 2 each week and pair program through an issue. And at the end of the 8-week program, they have worked together on a software development team to build an app. And it's really fun and it's really amazing. You check us out on our website if you want to learn more. Follow us on Twitter. I also want to mention our code of conduct. If you haven't read our code of conduct, it is also on the website. I'll share a link to that. We are really dedicated to upholding and maintaining a really psychologically safe space for everybody involved with Collab Lab, whether that's our collabbies, our mentors, our Tech Talk speakers, our Tech Talk attendees. So please adhere to the code of conduct and check that out when you have time. Let's see, what else am I missing on here? The talks are recorded and posted to YouTube. So if you have to check out early or something, please stop back by and catch up on the recordings. And last but not least, a shameless plug, consider sponsoring the Collab Lab if you wish, because we are completely volunteer run and would love to offer everybody in our community an even better experience. So with that, I will turn it over.
All right. Well, let me introduce Temi Olukoko. Temi is a self-taught software engineer at a startup in London, UK. She started learning to code in March 2020 and landed her first role as a software engineer in April 2021. She is passionate about encouraging minorities and marginalized groups to get into tech and thus founded SimplexCode, an educational tech platform. And with that, I'm going to turn over the talk to Temi.
Thank you, Rachel and Stacy. I'm now going to share my screen. Okay. Okay. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes,
yep, okay, perfect. Okay, great. Okay, so afternoon, morning, or evening, everyone, depending on where you are. I hope you've all had a good day so far. Before I dive into it, I just say thank you to the Collab Lab, especially Rachel, for having me here today. I'm really looking forward to delivering this workshop. So as a brief introduction to myself, my name is Temi and I'm a software engineer at a startup in London. So I started learning how to code in March 2020 by taking courses on Udemy, YouTube, participating in hackathons, and working on personal projects. Whilst in my self-taught journey, I noticed that there was a lack of beginner-friendly tech-related resources and workshops available for people who were trying to break into the industry, especially here in the UK. So I founded SimplexCode, an educational technology platform that gives people in the early stages of their career the tools to navigate the tech industry with confidence. And this is one of our early workshops. So yeah, I'm really excited to be delivering it to you all today. And along with me is Joe, who's part of the SimplexCode team. So we'll be also keeping an eye on things to make sure everything runs smoothly. We do want to spread the word about what we do here at Simplex. So we'd love for you to tag us on social media and give us a follow to show that you're attending today. So before I dive into the workshop, here are some things to consider this evening. So the first one is to keep yourself on mute if you're not talking. It can be distracting to those who are presenting if there's noise in the background. Please also be mindful of any words that are unkind or hate speech, because we're all here to learn, so please be respectful. If you have any questions, please do leave them in the chat box and they'll be answered in some of the up and coming Q&A sessions. And this is a workshop, so you do get what you put in. So try to take part in discussions and polls where you can to keep interactivity going. So this workshop, some of the topics we will include discussing the importance of getting to know your team and company early on when you join, finding and support your career growth and personal development, exploring your company's internal documentation, like their code base, documents, and more, to get familiar with the way your team work. We'll also touch on setting boundaries, goals, and tracking. And will be a collaborative breakout room task near the end of this workshop, where you'll work in groups to discuss how you would prepare for a one-to-one with your manager. Are you? My guess is that you may have gotten a new job, and if so, congratulations. I'm sure you've put a lot of effort and hard work to get to this point, but it doesn't stop here. So getting a new job is only half the battle, because succeeding and doing well takes some planning and hard work. Even if you're not in a new role, you might be junior in your career and interested in how you can do well at your job, or maybe you're just around the corner from landing your first tech role. But no matter your career stage, I'm certain you'll find value in today's workshop. So before I dive into anything, it would be good to get an idea of what role some of you are currently in and what you're doing at the moment. Could you please menti.com and use the code that you see on the screen? So that should be 70459214. I think Joe from the Simplex team will send the link and code in the Zoom chat now. So I think hopefully you can all see my screen. It should be the poll, and the question is, what is your new or current role? Or maybe what role are you looking to get into as well? You could also answer that. But it would be good just to get an idea of what role some of you are in. Oh, front-end engineer, junior front engineer. Okay, great. So quite a few front-end developers. Are there any other maybe types of roles people are in now? It would be great if some more of you could fill that out. Oh, nice. Wow. Computer science student at a research lab. That sounds really cool. UX UI designer. Nice. Associate software engineer, and someone's in a non-tech role. Okay. So it seems like there's quite a range of different roles that some of you are in, and it looks like some of you are looking to get into the tech industry as well. And I see a freelance developer, full stack .NET developer. Okay, cool. Yeah, it looks like there's a big range, which is really interesting. So I'm sure you'll all bring different perspectives today to the workshop, which is really, really good. There is another poll. I'll go to the next one. Yeah, so the next question, which I hope you can all see on the screen, is what are you struggling with in your current role? So it should be on the same website using the same code. So it would be good if you could write anything that you might be struggling with at the moment, or so in your current role, or maybe if you're trying to get into a particular role as well, if there's anything you're finding difficult, that would be good to know as well. Still looking for my first engineering job, knowing when, how to ask for help. That is a good one. I'd like to be more technical. Okay, great. So quite a range here. I know the second one, so knowing when or how to ask for help, is a really tough one that I'm still struggling with myself. I think I'm a lot better now than I was previously in my previous role, but that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. How to land an interview without any experience, getting mentorship guidance in my small startup. That is also a good one, but we will definitely be covering that. Transitioning from freelance to a full-time role. Okay. That is a good one too. Imposter syndrome, bonding with your team. Yeah, many employers looking for more experience. Oh, wow. Okay. Creating a good portfolio, making a structured plan for my, yeah, these are some really good ones, and some of which will be covered today during the workshop. But if not, as I mentioned earlier, we have a few Q&A sessions where I'll try and answer as many as possible. And I'm sure if Rachel or anyone else attending today have any opinions too, we could have a bit of a chat as well. So I will move on now to deliver the workshop. But as I mentioned, we will definitely come back to some of these. So feel free to keep filling these out if you like. Okay. Okay, so can you all see my workshop screens at the moment? Yep, perfect, great. Okay, so it might seem obvious, but the first thing you should do when you start your new role is to try and introduce yourself to as many people as possible, and just try and get to know your team and company. And how you do this will vary depending on the size of your organization. So if you're working at a startup or a smaller size company, it's really important to make an effort to get to know everyone. So you could approach this by making a list of all of your colleagues in your organization and scheduling a 20 to 30-minute chat with each of them. So if you have maybe one 20-minute or 30-minute chat every day, I'm sure in a few weeks or a month or so, you would have spoken to most people if you're at a small organization. On the flip side, if you're working at a big company, it's almost impossible to speak to everyone. And there's almost no point really in trying to get to know tens of hundreds of thousands of people. So in this case, you need to make an effort to really get to know people within your immediate team. And a tip here, which someone told me really early on in my career, is to try and get to know your manager's manager and other senior colleagues well. And this is beneficial for a few reasons. I think the first one is that if you're at a bigger company, especially if you've joined straight from college or university or from a non-technical background, it can be difficult to understand how the organization runs and how everything works. So getting to know those people higher up will give you a better understanding of the structure of the company. And another good reason to get to know like your boss's boss is just for visibility and progression within the company. So for example, if your manager wants to put you forward for a promotion, they will communicate this with their own manager. So if you're on good terms with these senior colleagues, it will be easier for the person you report to justify any promotions or opportunities on your behalf. And I think in general as well, it's a good idea to, as well as getting to know senior people within your team and company, really make an effort to network and get to know people across your kind of level as well in your role, and almost network horizontally as well. Everyone in your team and company can bring value. So chat to as many people as you can and get to know people. So as well as getting to know your team or company, it's a good idea to get familiar with your company's internal system and documents. So this could include their code base if you're a software developer. So for example, this could be your company's GitHub repository where they store code from past and current projects. So it's a good idea to do this as a junior developer, because a lot of your time will not be spent writing code, but instead trying to understand code that's already been written by other people. So to understand a new code base, you could find a mentor, and we'll touch on this shortly, or colleagues who can give you an overview of the code base and who are also willing to answer any questions you might have. From there, you can then ask them to set you a task to apply what you've learned. So this could be adding a button to a web page or adding a sign-up form to a web page as well. And then what you can do is get your code reviewed at the end of that. You can also apply a similar concept, even if you work as a designer, tester, DevOps engineer, etc. The idea is just to get familiar with the projects your team has worked on and the way that your team or company work as well. And you should also make sure you spend time reading any internal technical documentation to get a better understanding of particular tech stacks your team uses, or even how to set up certain development environments. I know at work, I spend a lot of time reading documentation, trying to understand how to solve certain problems or even work with certain tech. It can be daunting starting a new job as you're coming into a completely new environment, working with people you're unfamiliar with and doing a role that you might have never done before. So if you're joining your new workplace as a minority or someone who's part of a marginalized group, it can be even more daunting and overwhelming. So having allies will make you feel more included and supported whilst you're getting to know your new workplace. In case you're not aware of what an ally is, it's someone who is in a position of power or privilege in relation to you, who will support your career growth and development. So they're likely to support your causes, help you solve problems, or even just give advice whenever you feel like you might need it. And there are lots of different types of allies, so you can have more than one. I think the most recognized type of ally is a sponsor. And essentially what they do is they will talk about your strong points to others when you're not in the room. So this might be in performance reviews or promotion discussions. They may also put you forward for stretch assignments and other learning opportunities to help progress your career. And there are several other types of allies like advocates, champions, but essentially the role of an ally is just to really help you progress further in your career. And as important as it is to have different types of sponsors and mentors, I think the best thing you can do during the early stages of your career, like I mentioned earlier, is just to get to know as many people as you can that you work with. So now that you're aware of what an ally is, you might now be wondering how you can find one. And I think the most obvious way is to spend time getting to know the people that you work with by using some of the approaches I meant early on. I think just by getting to know your colleagues, you'll be able to pick up on some traits and be more intentional with how you build your relationships going forward. Another way to find allies might be to always make sure you're putting in as much effort as you can when you're working on projects, so you really produce work that people will want to champion and support. And lastly, I think this just goes for anything that you do, but make sure that you're always a good team player by listening to other people's points of views, being professional and trustworthy, and communicating effectively. As well as finding allies, it's also a good idea to find a mentor. And a mentor is someone who can help provide you with the support you need and kind of steer you in the right direction. They will also be responsible for encouraging you to work towards your individual goals and objectives, and will shortly touch on the importance of goal setting. And something to note here is that your mentor doesn't actually have to have the same role as you, but it is good to choose someone who understands your role. And how you find a mentor is completely up to you. There are lots of different ways you can do so. So some companies might actually set you up with a mentor when you first join, which is really good, but it doesn't mean that other people in your organization can't act as mentors too. You can have several different mentors for different things. As I mentioned earlier, a mentor is literally someone who can just support you and guide you when you feel like you need that guidance. Your company might have a mentorship program, and if so, this is a really good place to start, since people in these programs are already willing and able to help yourself and take on mentees. But if these options aren't available to you, then you can take the approach of just speaking to different people and networking with them in order to identify people who you'd like to mentor you. And once you've thought about someone who you'd really like as a mentor, you can take an approach of asking them if they'd be up for monthly catch-ups and meetings and go from there. You don't actually need to be explicit and say, will you be my mentor? You can just build that relationship organically and have catch-ups every so often and see how things progress from there. Okay, so there's been quite a lot of information so far. So I'm going to pause for a few minutes in case anyone has any questions. So you can either take yourself off mute or drop some questions in the chat. If no one has any questions, I will go back to the poll, the poll where some of you dropped in some of your issues that you're struggling with now, and I'll answer a few of those questions. But feel free to take yourself off mute or write anything in the chat. I'll have a look now at the chat and see if anything. Oh, okay, I see one. Okay, so someone said, oh, I think Stacy said, I'd like to ask, what piece of advice would you give someone new about being successful here? So in the company, if they aren't in your department, or in the role, if they are in the same department?
Sorry, I was just kind of saying, like, when you were saying schedule a chat with friends across the organization, I was like, yes, I love that. And when you go in there, sometimes as a new person, you feel kind of lost, right? You're like, I don't even know what to say. So if you're just like, give me some advice, give me advice about how you think I can be successful. It's a really great kind of starter that's valuable. It's more valuable than like, tell me your dog's name, right? If you have 20 minutes, you are like, let's cut to the chase. Give me some advice. So yes, I love everything you're saying. It's totally on point.
Great, thank you. And yeah, I do agree with that. So when I was scheduling these 20-minute chats with people at my current company, I would ask questions like, what are your current goals now? And especially if that person was really senior, it meant that I can kind of have an idea of, okay, when I get to the point they're at, what kind of things should I be working towards? So I completely agree with what you said. That's a really, really good point.
I love that. Asking what other people's goals too gives you kind of insight to where you can contribute and like help them kind of like scratch each other's backs. I love that.
Yeah, definitely. I think someone said, oh yeah. So how do you, there's quite a lot. How do you go about finding a mentor if you're not in your first developer role currently? Okay. I think a good way to do that would be, for one, attend events like this. So I know for myself, especially during lockdown and COVID, I attended a lot of virtual tech events. So those are really good ways to meet other people, especially if they're like more interactive workshops where you can chat and get to know other people. I think by doing that, you'll find out about people's journeys and kind of what they're doing now in the tech space. And if they're maybe in a role that you want to be in or doing something that you admire, you can, take down the details and reach out to them afterwards and start to build that relationship from there. So events is definitely one of them. Social media as well. I met my current mentor on Instagram. So I was learning to code through the 100 Days of Code challenge, and I was documenting the projects I was building. And at some point, I reached a point where I needed help and assistance, and he reached out to me and we pair program a lot, even though he's based all the way in the US. So I think, social media, tech events are really good ways to find mentors. Okay. Oh yeah, and someone asked now, so what would be some good questions to ask during the one-on-one chats with your team? I think, so as I touched on earlier, definitely asking what people's goals are or how they where they are now in their current role, so their journey. I always find that really interesting. Ask what projects they've worked on before and how they've found that, like what projects were challenging and what made them challenging as well. So yeah, I think digging deeper into their journey into the industry and how they find working at that current company are good ways to kind of chat and get to know your team better. Okay, so I will kind of pause there and go back to delivering the workshop. There will be one more Q&A checkpoint at the end of this, so yeah. Right, so starting a new job is a fresh start and a really good opportunity to shed some old routines. So in the first few weeks, it's a good idea to develop a good work routine and set good habits early on. So a good work routine can look very different for different people. So this is just an example of what you could do. So you could spend some time going through emails each morning, and then you might write down a to-do list of the tasks you need to get done. You might also decide to make a conscious effort to log what you do and how you do it, and just take note of any issues you come across so that you can ask for help if you need it. Then at the end of the day, you could review your task list and evaluate what needs to be done the next day to help you hit the ground running in the morning. So early on when you've joined the company, I think it's good to sit down with your manager to clarify your mutual expectations. So this could include understanding how you'll both work together, how you might get any resources that you need to do your job well, and also how your performance will be assessed. So I think it's also a good idea to arrange check-in points with your manager. So this could be weekly, bi-weekly, or once a month, just depending on how often you feel like you need those check-in points. And during these meetings, try and take responsibility to come prepared. So use your time effectively and identify things you've achieved or areas that you might be struggling with. it is unlikely that you'll be working with your manager on a daily basis. So make them aware of your strong areas and areas that you need help or your improvement areas. In most companies, you will have a 90-day or 3-month review just to discuss your performance. If your manager pencil one in with you early on, then make sure to do this yourself to check in with each other and just verify you're still on the same page. This leads me nicely onto my next point, which is to set goals and objectives with your manager. So we touched on the importance of defining what success looks like on the previous slide. And doing this process will make it easier for the both of you to set goals and objectives, as you'll know what your manager wants from you. And following this, you can then set some objectives with them or your mentor, so you know how you will achieve your objectives. And it's all well and good setting goals and objectives, but you really then need to make an effort to actively work towards achieving them. And this is where it becomes important to have regular check-ins with your mentor or your manager, so you can voice any concerns or struggles you have and get the support you need from them too. So it's really hard to level up in your career alone. So use your colleagues, your mentors, your allies, just to help you get to where you want to be. As much as it's important to have goals and objectives, you should really track the things you're achieving along the way, and no achievement is too small to track. So you can do this by keeping a brag folder or diary of your achievements. So you might have a folder where you have evidence of what you've achieved. This might be emails from colleagues where they might have praised you for your work, presentations you've delivered, or even just records you've made of what you've achieved. So if you have a conversation with a colleague where they say, you know, well done on this project, or for delivering this really well, just make a note of it. And having all of this in one place will make it easy for you to put yourself forward for promotions and also provide evidence of your positive contributions when you're asked to. And whilst taking note of what you're achieving, it's also a good idea to update your CV. And this might sound strange, especially if you've just joined a company, but updating your CV with your achievements helps you become more aware of your progress. And it also prepares you for any future interviews, whether that's internal with your current company or externally. It's just never a good idea to leave updating your CV to a few years down the line. So now we're going to put some of what we've learned into practice by getting into groups and discussing how you might go about preparing for a one-to-one performance review meeting with your manager. So for some context, a performance review is just an assessment where your manager will evaluate how you've been doing over the past few months or 6 months or year, and will identify your strengths, your weaknesses, give you feedback, and help you set goals for the future. So I think now you might be getting into breakout rooms, and it will be good to have a chat maybe for about 5 minutes, and then we can discuss what you've come up with afterwards.
About how many participants did you want in each breakout room?
If there's about 20,
it looks
maybe
like
5 in each.
Okay, let's see. Okay, 4 to 5 in each group. Assign automatically. Ready? Set, go. Open. People are leaving, so it must be working. Looks like folks are getting there. All right. Looks like they all got there. Should we pop into them or?
Yeah, I think what happens for the recording, I know from last time, it's just going to record this main talk, like us three.
Gotcha.
Because I think for Mindy's talks, they might have done breakout rooms. And I think Andrew and Mindy were just chatting. And when they looked at the recording, it was just them. So just a heads up. Yeah. I might just stay here in case people pop back in.
Yeah, that's a great idea. About how long do you want this breakout room to go on for?
So maybe for 5 minutes. So if they stay there for 5 minutes and then come back and we can discuss what they've come up with.
Cool. Okay, so about 42, I'll call them back. Although I've never done it before, so I'm going to broadcast message and say, you have about 5 minutes to discuss. Cool. This is great. So
Yeah, this is great.
in groups, how would you prepare for a one-to-one performance with your manager? What do y'all think? Obviously, you know the answers. Try and record something for the recording. I know for me, like one thing that's really important for us to do on our team is Andrew, actually the co-founder with me of Collab, is my manager at work. And he always has us collect our humble brags all throughout, you know, the week, the month, the quarter, and collect those like as we go. So we can be like, this is something I'm really proud of that I did. So when it comes time for performance reviews, we're like, I've already got a whole list of artifacts for you without having to like stress over digging and forgetting things.
Right.
What do y'all do?
Yeah, I haven't had well, I'm still looking for my tech job, for my first tech job. So I haven't had necessarily a one-on-one in that situation. Yeah, I mean, most performance reviews I've had have been different industries. So I don't know if it's like a different setup.
Yeah, that's fair.
I can contribute.
Yeah, I think for me as well, I definitely keep a log of my achievements. I only started doing it in my most recent job. In my first job, I didn't really do it. So when it came to looking back on what I've done well, it was hard for me to remember. So I'm definitely big on recording what you do as you do it. So that's something I think is really valuable. Definitely.
I love that. One thing I'll notice too, like, because I'm going through this process literally today and refining those notes. And I'm like looking back like, God, did I really think that that was an achievement at the time? And trying not to like walk myself back and belittle it. Because it's like, yes, at the time that was an achievement for you. Leave it, be proud of it, and just know that you've grown a lot. So it doesn't seem as significant now.
Yeah,
I like at it like
I like that idea of keeping like like you were saying, a brag folder, or just like some sort of like a humble brag, like anything where it's there, so then you can remember and also have like those artifacts to reflect on. So it feels yeah, like there's evidence.
Yeah, another thing that I think is really important to tell like early career engineers, because we're all going to wind up in different companies, right, who are set up differently, who are in different states in their growth. And so it's like, make sure well before you ever go into performance review, months in advance, that you know what you're being reviewed on, that you know what you're going to be talking about and what you should be looking for. Because it's like, if there's not clear expectations as to like how to grow and how you should be performing, then it's really hard to do a good job and feel confident in whether or not you're doing a good job. So that'd be like the first thing to ask, like, when are performance reviews and what am I being reviewed on?
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, I do think early on it is important to have those conversations with your manager and find out what do they actually expect from you. That way you can always have that in the back of your mind whenever you're on a project or doing a task. So yeah, I definitely agree. Totally.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and click the close because I think it gives them like 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Close. 60 seconds. And they should be filing back in. I'm gonna grab some water real fast. And then try and drink it walking and not spill on my face. Welcome back. "31 seconds. Are we gonna do more breakout rooms?
No, I think this is the last one. I have a few more slides and then I'll be ready to wrap up.
Oh, awesome. This is great so far. I'm loving this. I think this is super valuable.
Thank you. It's really, really good to hear that. Yeah, this is like our first kind of workshop. So it's good to hear that you find it useful.
Oh yeah,
It's
no,
so
it's
amazing.
great. I love Menti. Yeah, I do a lot of stuff with like Out in Tech and they do that as well. And it's great.
All right, I think everybody is back. I'll turn the floor back to you.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I hope some good chats have been going on. I think it would be good to have maybe one person from each group either write in a chat or come off mute and talk about what you discussed and how each of you thought you prepare for a one-to-one performance review with your manager. So maybe if someone from group 1 kind of goes first and shares what they all found.
I just closed out of the group, so I don't quite remember who was in. Oh, here we go. Group 1 was Jennifer, Kayla, Patrick, Yolanda.
Okay. I think someone said, oh, tech difficulties, but asking what you did right after than what you did wrong. Oh, asking what you did right rather than what you did wrong. Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a good one. When asking for feedback, I think it's good to get both sides. So it's definitely good to get some positive feedback so you can keep that in your mind, and you know, that obviously raises your spirits. But it's also good to get some constructive feedback or criticism too. That way, going forward, you are aware of the areas that you can improve on. So I think that's definitely a good point. So Brittany said, we agreed that a brag sheet is a good idea since it's easy to forget everything that you've done. Yeah, definitely, I agree. I was just talking to Stacey and Rachel about this. I found that in my first tech job, I found it really hard to remember what I did previously. So I've made an effort in my new job early on to really document everything that I do, whether it's small or big, all my wins. So yeah. So that you can tell your supervisor about your successes. Yeah, definitely. I think your manager will definitely be aware of some of the good things that you do through speaking to your colleagues and project managers, but it is definitely good to reflect on how you've performed and what you've done. That way you can feed that back to your manager, and it also shows them that you're self-aware and you are taking the time to think about what you're doing, how you're doing, what you think you're doing well and where you need to improve on. So Caitlin from group 3, we said we'd review our brag doc to remind/tell our manager what we've been doing well. We'd also check with colleagues to get a sense of what to expect in the performance review. Yeah, that is a really good one. I think whilst you were all in the breakout rooms, Stacey also said how it's good to know from your manager, what are you being reviewed on? That way, before you go into it, you know what you're being measured against. And it also means that as you're working on projects, working on tasks, you can also keep in the back of your mind what your goals are and what's really important to your manager. So definitely, I agree. Is there anyone else from any other group? If so, feel free to write it in the chat, or feel free to come off mute as well. Oh, great. Okay, great. So Aldred has said, what good things did I accomplish? What challenges did I face? How did I work through them? What did I learn from them? What are my goals for the next 3 months, 6 months, a year? What can I do to improve my work? Yeah, I agree with all of these. I think these are all really, really good points. I'd also say especially with the goals one, I think it is also good when you are kind of self-evaluating, which is something that's definitely good to do before you go into these. Maybe think about if any of your goals have changed, and why they've changed, and if you think it's a good idea to kind of align them in a different way and set new objectives. But yeah, definitely what you can do to improve is a really good one. I think good positive feedback is always really good to hear, but I personally think, or I prefer to hear constructive feedback so that I then know what I can improve on to be, to achieve even more. Yeah, so yeah, it seems like a lot of you have had some really good discussions, and it is great to hear some of your points. I think what I'll do now is I have a few more slides to get through, and then there is one last Q&A session at the end for anyone who might have any more questions. Okay, so another thing that's important to do when you start your new role is to challenge yourself. And I think it's really easy and very normal to feel overwhelmed when you first start. But I would say try to make the effort to set ambitious goals for yourself. So you can try to challenge yourself by putting yourself in situations that really align with your goals. So an example of this would be to pick up tasks at work that might seem difficult or tricky to you. So it might seem daunting, but stepping out of your comfort zone and solving new problems will really, really help with your career growth. And if you just continue to repeat this process and aim to take on more responsibility each time, I think this is just a really good way to just build on your personal development and your career progression as well. And I think being realistic, you might not always achieve everything that you set out, but going through the process of applying yourself, stepping out of your comfort zone wherever possible is just really good to just progress in general. Something that's also really important is to be intentional about the boundaries that you set. So definitely be conscious about not making a habit of staying too late or coming in too early to avoid people expecting you to keep that up. I think it is important to put in time to your projects and work hard to deliver on certain tasks, but overexerting yourself won't allow you to do your best work, but it will instead lead to burnout. And you don't want to burn out within the first few months of your job. So it's really about finding a balance between putting in work, working hard and delivering, but then also making sure that you stay within those boundaries. So it is good to be a team player and to make positive contributions to your team, but learning to say no or learning to draw a line somewhere will really help you focus on your goals and manage your time effectively. It is really important to remember that your well-being and mental health is very important when you start a job. So try not to compromise on that. So there's definitely a lot to learn as a new employee, from how you do your job effectively to how your company or organization works. But don't be afraid to ask questions to get clarity when you need it. It's much better to get the information to do things correctly versus maybe learning the hard way when you're doing something that's incorrect. There's definitely a balance there. No one expects you to be a pro when you're new to your job, when you're new to the role or company, and definitely no one expects you to know everything about your organization straight away either. And it's very likely that other people will have similar questions to you, so don't be afraid to ask. But with this being said, make sure you show initiative by doing some of your research first. So really take some time when you first join to really learn about your position and the organization before you begin making suggestions or talking about anything that might be interpreted as not understanding your position or the company. Similar to setting boundaries, when it comes to asking questions, there's always a balance you should find with kind of doing research and finding out some things for yourself, but then also asking when you feel like you might have hit a wall or you can't find the answer. So I believe that's all we have time for this evening, but I really hope that you've all learned something from this workshop. I am aware that this might have been information overload for some of you, but we do have about 5 to 10 minutes for questions before I hand over to Rachel and Stacey to close up. So feel free to ask us some questions in the chat or take yourself off mute. I may also return to the poll kind of slide to answer some of the questions there as well. So feel free to ask any questions.
It looks like there's a question in the chat right now. Or a few.
Right. Oh yeah. So how do you keep yourself motivated when imposter syndrome and self-doubt begin to creep in? I think this is a really good one. I definitely know myself and pretty much everyone I know in tech definitely suffer with imposter syndrome. I think the one thing that really helps me, I think I heard someone say a little while back, is that whenever they feel imposter syndrome, they go back to the resume or CV and literally read that. Because at the end of the day, I'm sure that you wouldn't have been hired if you weren't capable to do the job. You're definitely there for a reason. So I think sometimes reminding yourself of how far you've come in your journey, kind of what you've done to get there and what you've achieved so far is a good way to kind of remind yourself that you definitely do belong in that position and at that company. But I do understand that it is really easy to feel like an imposter. But I think that's one thing that really stands out to me. I don't know if Stacey or Rachel, if you have some advice for that either, but that's one thing that helps me.
I absolutely love that. And I think that this really goes well with how you are like, they don't expect you to be the expert right off the bat. And one thing that I love about this community is that so many of us are coming from such different backgrounds. So you might not be an expert at Next.js or whatever tool you're working on, but you do come with some really valuable strengths that you can apply to the role. So a lot of us have customer support or customer service, or we've been, waitress or in fields where we work a lot with humans. So we're really good at those things. We're good at communicating. We're good at having conversations. Use those skills and leverage those to make the connections that you need to the people who have the answers. So when you have this network of people that you can sort of tap into because you built good relationships with them, you have so much more knowledge at your fingertips that can help you feel more confident moving forward, like you have people to fall back on when you don't have the answers.
Definitely. I think that is a really good point as well. Definitely use your network and the people that you know to really help you in any areas that you feel like you might need some guidance or some advice on. So I think that's really good advice. I think Deborah asked, how do you negotiate or transition from an internship into a full-time role? I do have, I guess, some experience with this. So I did an internship a while back when I was at university. It wasn't in the tech kind of industry. It was in more of the like physical sciences. So I did an internship for about 2 or 3 months, and I was offered a full-time role at the end of that. And from my experience, I found the best way to do that was kind of what I touched on earlier, which is to really put your best foot forward when you are in these working environments. Because if your manager can see that you put in your best foot, you really work hard, you collaborate well with your teammates, you ask questions, you get involved, I think that really signals to them how passionate and involved you are in your role. So even if you were brought into your company as an intern or for a summer placement, your manager and your colleagues seeing kind of how hard you work and how dedicated you are to your role is definitely something I think that they value. And without even you having to apply for a full-time role, you can get that offer there. I know that's something that works for me a few years down the line, but I'm open to hearing anyone else's points of view with transitioning from an internship to a full-time role. I think, what other questions do we have? I think Kayla said, along with reviewing documentation, like you mentioned, are there any resources you'd recommend for getting up to speed? I think apart from internal documentation, I really like certain sites. So especially for things like JavaScript, I think it's like MDN, I think that's what it's called. So they have a bunch of documentation on kind of some JavaScript concepts, which I find really helpful. I also use W3 Schools a lot. They have a lot of resources on JavaScript, but also some .NET kind of frameworks and languages if you use that. So yeah, I tend to use those quite a lot, and Stack Overflow I think is one that some developers might be familiar with. That always has a really good kind of plethora of Q&A, so people can ask questions on that forum, and then people can answer them. Oh great, I think Chris said you can download Zeal or Dash for offline documentation for tons of web stuff, so that's really good. What else? Oh, so I think Brittany asked, what do you recommend if you've asked your boss for regular one-to-ones, help setting goals, objectives, etc., and your boss agreed, but then never followed up? Only one other senior developer, and both of them are almost always busy with a project or client. I think that is a tricky one, especially if you've asked for those one-to-ones and to set goals. If they never followed up, I think assuming you haven't done this, something I would do is just send the invite anyway. Maybe, so if you want to catch up bi-weekly, so I'd send an invite that's like a recurring meeting for like the next 3 to 6 months. And hopefully they'd accept it. But if not, I just drop them a message saying, oh, hey, I've just scheduled in these regular one-to-ones, remind you. So hopefully that would get them to kind of join those one-to-ones, because I think if you are a manager, I think it is, even if you're busy, I think it's quite important for them to make time for you and to have those one-to-ones. So I would definitely say just try and send out the calendar invite anyway and see what happens. But yeah, I'm not sure if anyone has any other advice on that, because that is a bit of a tricky one, I think.
I think when it comes to scheduling one-on-ones, like I have been there and I totally get it. People get really busy and you feel like you're being a little pushy, asking for these things that you need. But when it comes down to it, those are things that you need to be successful, especially early on in your career. So I'd continue following up with them and be the driver of that meeting, be the one who comes, be the one who asks the question and has the agenda ready, make it as easy for them as possible. When it comes down to it, if they're not prioritizing your growth to make you be like a really beneficial piece of their team, it might not be the best fit. And it might be a fact of like you having to find external help when it comes to mentorship and people to help you set goals and navigate those. So I'd recommend, if you can't get through to a really good place with your leaders, find other people to do it and maybe start finding a place that facilitates growth a little bit better. But I say this knowing it's really freaking hard to get a job in tech. So take everything you can out of that opportunity, but keep your eye open for a place that really values your growth and supporting you too, because you're worth it.
Okay, great. So yeah, I think it's now just about time. So I think thank you to everyone for attending this workshop. Thank you, Stacey and Rachel, for organizing everything and for kind of going back and forth and helping me set things up. I think your level of engagement and participation has made it really, really enjoyable to deliver. So yeah, if you learned something from today's workshop and you'd like to attend one of our future events, make sure to give us a follow on social media to keep up with what we're doing. But yeah, thank you all really much for attending today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Temi. And like I said earlier, I will put the YouTube video up on the meetup page tomorrow. And you were saying that you might want to put the slides on the meetup page comment as well. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. This was wonderful. This is great. Everyone have a great day. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye, friends. See you in 2 weeks at the next TikTok.